This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. Next up, we get Jeff Jarrett doing the concert. Meltzer would say it was pointed out that the fat guitarist was Al Anderson, formerly of the band NRBQ, which was years ago connected with Lou Albano. The lip syncing was obvious when you were looking for it, but it came off great. This is probably one of the best quote unquote gimmick angles ever done. I mean, I really enjoyed this, especially because we've had so much fun with the song. And I think that Jim Johnston is out here, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think Jim was definitely out there.
The idea of doing this concert on the pay-per-view, is this a Vince idea? I mean, is this a Vince storyline is my point. We've often heard that Vince really focuses on certain acts, certain performers, certain storylines, and he really sinks his teeth into it. This feels like this could have qualified for one.
Vince was heavily involved in it, but this was also during a time where Pat and I had a little bit more free reign. And so this was something that we had developed for quite a while, and we're really looking forward to the payoff and then the next steps.
Next up, we've got Bam Bam Bigelow pinning Henry Godwin in 5 minutes and 33 seconds with a cradle. Meltzer will say nothing with the match was wrong, but it was just kind of dead. 3/4 of a star. Is this just one of those Styles Clash deals? They both need a smaller guy to sort of build around a little bit.
Big time. It was just like two guys colliding in the middle of the ring and then neither one really knowing exactly what in the hell to do.
It is pretty special when you think, hey, I'm going on last with Lawrence Taylor. I'm in the main event of WrestleMania. Fast forward a handful of months. Now I'm wrestling Henry Godwin for 5 minutes, middle of the card. Next up, here's why we're really
They're on
here.
the card.
They are on the card. Tremendous match. 4.5 stars is coming up here for Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett. Shawn's going to win the Intercontinental title. They go 20 minutes and 1 second. Really great stuff. Go out of your way to watch. This is Shawn when he is really in his prime. He's starting to really showcase what he can do. I think his best stuff is probably second half of 97, early 98 from a character, but in ring, man, it's hard to poke holes in Shawn Michaels' game here. And Jeff Jarrett holds his own. A really, really good show, for both guys. Meltzer's going to say Jarrett signaled for Rhodey to trip Michaels as he got whipped into the ropes, but Michaels reverses it and Jarrett was tripped. As he got up, Michaels hit him with the super kick for the pin. After a celebration with Michaels in the dressing room, they went back to the ring, presumably for the Jarrett-Rhodey split, but it didn't happen. And later, Hendricks did a stand-up babbling about a phantom split. All right, a lot to unpack here. Bruce, what happened?
They went out, they did their match. Jeff did the job exactly as was supposed to be done. And then after all was said and done, Jeff called for Road Dogg to just pull him out of the ring, They went to the back. And, I believe that my exact words were, "What the fuck?" And they just kept right on walking, grabbed their bags and left the arena.
Meltzer would say the biggest story revolving In Your House 2 was just minutes after being involved in the two best matches on the show. Jeff Jarrett and the Rhodey quit the promotion. Details as to why are sketchy at press time, although it is known they were unhappy about the angle, which had been a major source of discussion over the past few weeks. Originally, during the In Your House pay-per-view show, when Jarrett was lip-syncing a concert of the song, there was to be a screw-up, revealing Rhodey as the singer. Between that and the screw-up in the IC title match, it would start the feud with them meeting and facing each other at SummerSlam. There was a lot of talk, largely based on how well the video was received, that doing a turn this early was premature. As it was, they did the turn, or at least were booked to do it later in the show during the match where Jarrett lost his IC to Shawn Michaels with an attempted interference by Rhodey backfiring and then leading to the finish. Jarrett and Rhodey were supposed to do a breakup after the match, but just didn't do it. Instead, they went backstage and had Doc Hendricks in his lone appearance talk about the breakup happening backstage and a fight without it ever actually taking place. Jarrett and Rhodey simply both walked out of the building that night in the middle of the show. There were plenty of rumors as to why the two would leave together, since Jarrett, mainly from the video, was actually starting to show some charisma after a lengthy mega push that for the most part had been unsuccessful. There were also rumors with Jarrett's father, Jerry, working as a consultant to WCW, that somehow there's a connection there, and WCW is said to be interested in Jarrett, but it's not such a small matter to overcome that Jarrett has a WWF contract. Rhodey, who was also being given his first career break after being a jobber for WCW and Smoky Mountain as Brian Armstrong, from the looks of things, seems to be walking away just as his career was getting ready to take off. At the Raw show the next day in Louisville, they didn't give a strong impression that they were gone, but Vince McMahon did give away that Jarrett was lip syncing the previous night and left the impression Rhodey was singing, and said Jarrett would never sing on a WWF show again. My goodness. This is one of those like, what stories? You know, sometimes Bruce, people say, "Hey man, who else would you like to do a podcast with? Who else do you think you could have a great podcast with?" And I always say, I think Jeff Jarrett has a story unlike anybody else. I mean, let's not forget, this is the same guy who once, quote unquote, held Vince up for money with the whole China Intercontinental title thing. But now here, years prior to that, just walks out. What was Vince's reaction when he's looking around saying, "God damn it, where's Jeff?"
Not real happy. I wasn't real happy. My brother actually is the one that came up to Gorilla to tell me. He said, "Yeah," he said, "Jeff and Brian just left and said they quit." I was like, "Okay, great." And continued on with the show.
I believe the rumor over the years is Jerry Jarrett had given them bad information. And let's not forget,
Imagine that.
Jerry was fresh off of his run with you guys. He's no longer a part of the company, correct?
Who? Jerry Jarrett?
Yes, sir.
No.
So Jerry Jarrett, when Vince thought, quote unquote, he was going to prison, was around the company and would try to program some of the weekend programming where it heavily featured his son. His son now gets a big push, and so does his pal Brian Armstrong, but maybe they didn't like the creative, so they just walk out, perhaps thinking that Jerry has other ideas planned for them. And we know that that's not exactly going to work out. They've got to wait out Jeff's contract. And then of course, Rhodey's going to come back first, and they're going to try to repackage him and build it up. But man, Brian had a lot of momentum here in this show and was poised to do big stuff. Is this the definition of loyal to a fault? I mean, it hurt his career to leave here, and he had the biggest company with the biggest push behind him, and he just threw it away based on loyalty. Is that the way you think this can be summed up?
No, I would call it stupidity. I would call it just, naivete. Didn't think it through, believed in somebody that obviously had an axe to grind and had a history of just being Jerry Jarrett. So to that extent, that was, look, we all have to make our own decisions. And Brian and Jeff made a decision based on whatever information, whatever they were told and sold, if you will. I believe it was the wrong decision, but I also know from our vantage point that every step of the way that they were aware of what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, and had input into it. So it was a shock. It was a shock to me. It was a shock to Pat. But it also hurt. And that was one that hurt, because it's like, all you had to do was say, I don't want to do this, or can we do it a different way, or something like that, versus just saying, oh, well, Vince didn't talk to us and we didn't like the way it was going. And you never made an attempt, at least that we know of, to talk to Vince and or to tell him that. And you had many, many opportunities to tell us, and instead you yapped us to death to the point that we felt everybody was on board and everybody was good to go. So to that, shame on you. And we move on. But it was not, wasn't received well by me. I can definitely tell you that.
Have you talked to Jeff about it in recent years?
Oh yeah. I mean, I talked to Jeff about it when he came back, and I've talked to Jeff about it over the years. I think we agree to disagree, and I think that Jeff realizes now that wasn't the greatest move in the world to make.
Right.
So being in a position of being a promoter and being in the position of trying to do a television show and work with a lot of talent, and then have someone treat you like that, all of a sudden you go, oh, wow, hey, maybe I didn't handle that the best way. So I don't agree with the way Jeff and Road Dogg handled it in any way, shape, or form. And wish it wouldn't have happened, because I think that the angle and the story that we had laid out would have been awesome.
There was some sort of, maybe I have this confused, but I thought there was a phone call that night, maybe from Jeff or Jerry, but somebody either called the office or called Vince, or maybe someone called Jerry's house. I forget. But the gist is Jerry told somebody, oh, they're in my hot tub right now.
That was Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett. And Lawler pulled us over on the side of the road to inform us of it, that Brian and Jeff were in Jerry Jarrett's hot tub drinking champagne. And they're they've quit. They're not coming back. They're going to start WCW. And that was Jerry Jarrett to Jerry Lawler, and then Jerry Lawler to us. So as far as, what they truly were doing, I don't know. Maybe they were, but good for them.
Well, I'll tell you this, Jeff went out on a high spot when it came to the readers of the Wrestling Observer. It was almost unanimous. The best match was Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett. It got 159 votes. The only other match that got best match votes was Rhodey and 1-2-3 Kid. So the two guys who people thought had two of the best matches, and granted they're working with Shawn Michaels and 1-2-3 Kid, they're out of here. But hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.